Hello students, welcome back. The next section that we are going to deal with on the SAT is called the questions of main purpose and overall structure. So let's dive straight in. So on the reading and the writing section on the SAT, there will be some questions that ask you the main purpose and overall structure. In all probabilities, you might get about 2 questions out of the 27 that you're expected to attempt. To start with, one has to realize that the main purpose is not the main idea. It's very different from the main idea. So main purpose is not equal to the main idea. While the main idea says what the author wrote, the main purpose is why the author has written something that he has actually written. So here the question is why the author has written. So the purpose is why behind the passage. Why did the author write it? What did he want to accomplish, and so on and so forth. So a cue to find this kind of questions would be that probably he wanted to explain, to illustrate, to criticize, to argue, or to introduce something that is going on within the passage. So we will have to find that thing, that what is going on within the passage, and find out the motive of the author of writing the very passage. The next will be the structure. The structure is nothing but it shows how the paragraph works in order to find out or to emphasize the purpose of the writing. So the structure of the passage could be that it could go to a climax, or it could go the other way around. It could go to an anticlimax and things like that. So that is basically the structure of a passage. So we will have both kinds of questions wherein we are expected to answer the main purpose, and we are also expected to answer the structure. So these could be typical questions on the main purpose and overall structure. Which choice describes the overall structure of the text? Which best choice states the function of the underlined portion to the text as a whole? So you might find a paragraph and a part of the paragraph which is underlined, and we are expected to compare the underlined portion and its purpose vis-a-vis the rest of the text. Which choice describes the overall purpose of the text, and the reference to a particular time, a particular part of the text without actually it being underlined might be asked in the question. So we are going to chronologically take each of these questions and try to dissect the main purpose and the overall structure of the question. Before that, we are going to look into a part to whole relationship question. So as I have already mentioned, that you might have a question with a part underlined. We are expected to understand what information does the underlined portion contain, the underlined portion, and how is that information related to the text as a whole. What is the function of there, and other words that give it the do. What does it do in the whole passage? So this is the part to whole relationship we are expected to find out. So let's do some examples of each of these type of questions, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and let's see if we are able to get clarity on what these kinds of questions actually mean. Again, these are kinds of questions wherein you can find poetic phrases. So no matter how we cultivate the land, taming the forest and preying free, no matter how we irrigate the sand, making the desert blossom at command, we must always leave the borders of the sea, the immeasurable reaches of windy wave-wet beaches, the million-mile-long margin of the sea. Great. So, the first part, probably we are talking about taming nature. The first part we are talking about taming nature. right? So things that probably are very difficult to do, right? Like taming the forest and to be prairie free and cultivate the land, irrigate the sand actually, which is again very difficult to do. But then still, we have been able to do that. That's what the first part of the passage says: taming nature, whatever we have, achieved, making the desert blossom at command. Again, difficult thing to do, but then we have been able to do that. That's what it says. But the second part of the paragraph says we must always leave the borders of the sea. So we have not been able to do that. The immeasurable reaches, we have not been able to do that. Of the windy, wet beaches, the million. So this part, it says that it remains untamed. Remains untamed, right? So there is a part of nature that we have not been able to tame, is the purpose of probably writing this portion of this poem. So let's dive into the answer choices and see if we are able to find this kind of an answer. So the speaker provides examples of an admirable way of approaching nature and then challenges the approach. Not really. We are not looking at any admirable way of approaching nature. It is just that whatever we have accomplished. So probably I'll root out A. The speaker describes attempts to control nature and then offers a reminder that not all nature is controllable. Yeah, very much actually what we tried to understand out here. So yeah, B could be a probable answer. Let's look through the other two answers as well. The speaker argues against interfering with nature. No, definitely he doesn't do it. So if this part is incorrect, then this part has got to be incorrect. So I will not go through this one. The speaker presents an account of efforts to dominate nature. It does some or the other, and then cautions that such efforts are only temporary. Nothing has been mentioned on the passage which shows that these efforts are temporary. So again, because this part is probably incorrect, the whole has to be incorrect. So I would not go with D. So most probable answer to this one, in fact, the actual example, the answer to this one has to be B. So this is one part of the question wherein they are asking us to, find the overall structure of the text. Yeah, so now let's look at an example which asks you about the part to whole relationship. So the example goes like this: which choice best states the function of the underlined portion with the text as a whole? So the underlined portion being this one. So let's read it first. Researchers have found a nearly 164-year-old molar from a member of the archaic human species known as Denisovans in a cave in Laos. Now, Laos is a country, I guess. Yes, it is a country in South Asia. Yep. Suggesting that Denisovans lived in a wider range of environments than indicated by earlier evidence. So they had evidence before they found something in Laos, the molar or the tooth of this kind of species, human species, that they had some evidences, and now they feel that that evidence is not a valid evidence. So they lived in a wider range of environments that indicated by earlier evidence. Before the discovery, Denisovans were thought to have lived at only high altitudes and relatively cold climates in what is now known as Russia and China. So Russia and then China and then Southeast Asia is somewhere here near Thailand, Singapore, all Southeast Asia. So way below that in the equatorial region. So not necessarily. Now the new evidence wherein they found a molar, the tooth out here in Laos, suggests that they lived in a wider area. But the discovery of the tooth in Laos suggests that they may have lived at lower altitude, okay, in relatively warm climates in South Asia as well. Great. So now what does this portion actually do? This portion actually says that what was the previous belief right? What was the previous belief? And then it gives two examples that, okay, fine, Russia and China, where they are right now, these species used to live there and then in a colder climate. So that was the previous belief, and then now it is known that they used to live in a wider area. So it defines a term in the description that follows. No, definitely not. It emphasizes the main goal of the research introduced in the previous sentence. No goal has been defined, so I don't think there is any goal of research defined. So no. It provides a context that clarifies the significance of the information that follows in the rest of the sentence. Yes, most likely, because this is the context that they used to live in colder region, but the discovery of tooth in Laos suggests that they might live in low temperature and things like low altitudes and higher temperature as well, right? So this could be a probable option that there is a context, this one, which clarifies the significance of the information. And it dismisses as untrue the research presented in the previous sentence. It doesn't dismiss it as untrue, and then again, this is a very extreme word, so I definitely would not go in with a D. B is definitely not an option, and A is not an option. So definitely C should be our answer. So let's look at a different kind of main purpose and overall structure question. Which choice describes the overall purpose of the text? So let's read the text and let's see what is the purpose behind the author writing this kind of passage. In 1973, poet Miguel Algrain started inviting other writers who, like him, were a Neo-Rican, a term used for New Yorkers of Puerto Rican heritage, to gather in his apartment to present their work. The gatherings were so well attended that Algrain soon had to rent space in a cafe to accommodate them. Thus, the Nuyorican Poets Cafe was born. Moving to a permanent location in 1981, the Nuyorican Poets Cafe expanded its original scope beyond the written word, hosting art exhibitions and musical performances as well. Half a century since its inception, it continues to foster emerging Nuyorican talent. Great. So, an author has written this about a society wherein New York hosted Puerto Ricans, and they combined the two terms and made it a single term called Nuyorican, and then artists who were a part of this kind of fraternity, people who probably lived in New York but were Puerto Rican by birth, they would come and they would exhibit their art forms, and then it started small, grew to a cafe, and then now it has encompassed wider range of things like art forms, dances, etc., etc. Not only probably poetry and things like that, the written word that they started with. This is the meaning of the sentence, and probably the purpose is to make us aware of this kind of a society. I don't know. Let's look at the answers. To explain what motivated Algrain to form the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. So I'm quite sure that the motivation that this guy had is nowhere to be highlighted out here. So I am quite sure that A is not the answer. To situate the Nuyorican Poets Cafe within the cultural life of New York as a whole. To discuss why Nuyorican Poets Cafe expanded its scope to include art and music, definitely not this one. To provide an overview of the founding and the mission of the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, looks most likely that this would be the answer. Let's again deliberate between D and B. To situate the Nuyorican Poets Cafe within the cultural life of New York, nowhere. I don't think that this would be a possible answer. So, the possible answer to this one has to be a D. And the last type of questions that we might encounter on the main purpose and the overall structure are of this sort. The reference to the amendments to Clean Air Act primarily serves to do what. Now out here you will not find an, although this is a part to whole relationship like the one that we found wherein this portion of the text was underlined. Here you would not find an underline, but then you would find something, right, which would definitely appear on the text. So amendments to the Clean Air Act. So let's look for these words and underline them so that it becomes a typical part to whole relationship question. So it gives amendment, where is so when the amendments to the Clean Air Act give parks. So this is the portion. So this is the underlined portion, but then there is no underline out here. It's only given out here, and we can underline it by ourselves. So now let's read the question and see if we are able to find out the reference to why the reference was made to Clean Air Act and what purpose does it serve. What is the main purpose of that? Ever since Congress created the first national park at the Yellowstone in 1872, the parks have enjoyed legal protections. In 1960, the Line National Park Service was set up to maintain 5 areas unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. Okay, great. So additional legal backing came in 1977. So they made 5 areas unimpaired so that they could maintain it for future generations, and more backing was given to this kind of thing that they did in 1977 when amendments to the Clean Air Act gave parks the highest priority, designating them as Class 1 areas. Great. So what happened was that they fortified that these areas should be well maintained for people to enjoy for a long period of time, and new generations should enjoy these ones. So it fortified the amendments. The law is emphatic. Congress 10 hereby declares as a national goal prevention of any future and the remedifying of existing impairment of visibility in mandatory Class 1 federal areas, which impairment results from man-made air pollution. So great. So this portion is not really what we are looking at. This portion vis-a-vis this portion is what we are looking at. So let's read the answers. Site changes had a detrimental effect. Definitely it fortified. It is actually the opposite. So it didn't have detrimental effect. Provide support to a previous statement. Yeah, could be an answer. Introduce a controversial hypothesis. There is no controversy out here. And offer an alternative proposal. I'm quite sure that so the answer to this one has to be a B. So this is how the main purpose and overall structure questions on the SAT have to be approached. Stay tuned. The next section will be on comparing point of views.